Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, composed by Charles Mingus in memoriam to Lester Young. Here are notes, like the motes of the last dappled sunlight, melting like gold on the clusters of leaves. Here too is the singing light of the dawn in the same leaves, reawakened in the eyes of the man who has not slept throughout the night. Here are the first stars of the evening, like emeralds embroidered on velvet. And here are the last stars of the morning, like ice melting on silk. Here is the light in the smoke of the nightclub, where the feelings of lovers and lonely ones float to the ceiling in spirals. Here is their love of the music, which they cling to because they despair of anything else to rescue the heart of man. Here is the sound of the heart purely in love, loving nothing in particular but all of the particulars in the world in which that heart is alive and beating. Here is the sound of the heart and breathing, alive to the nuance of just this precise, unalterable moment and no other. Here is the joy of pure desire, which desires nothing but to be lost amongst all of the things which are. Here is the permanent moment of rain, remember. Here is the flurry of notes like snow, strangely warm, into which the voice of a woman suddenly enters to comfort you, but which is just as suddenly smothered again. Here is the ache of the air from which her voice has been so cruelly withdrawn. Here is the milky luminescence of fog, spread and reflected, droplet by droplet of wet, until nothing is seen but that silvery shining, the same as it was at the beginning of things. Beyond this, there is another darkness hardly seen, beyond which again is another and more perfect darkness, unseen. Here is the pit-a-pat-pat of counting, in which the spaces between the numbers are never the same length and are never the same shape either. Here is the moment when time stops and goes back on itself, when all the gestures and reachings of past life are repeated as though in a film, reversed. Here is the single damaging phrase, flashing like a tongue of terrible flame into the darkened room where a door has been opened by surprise. Here is the flickering of atoms and electrons jostling, sounds which began their journey to Earth 10 million years ago and more. Here is the annihilating honk of the great black holes in space, ravening for loose matter and light, so dense with being, they annihilate all being, all becoming, and all knowing. Here is the drone and cry of the creatures beneath the sea, the clutter of billions of claws drowned in seawater. Here is the love between particular men and women, transcending sex and generation, but locked in that same shuddering medium out of which the new is constantly coming, smelling like roses. Here are the eyes of the trees, glancing at you without smiling and without pain. Here are dresses and suits, lined up in racks on a city street, the shoes piled in bins which will never be worn, while barefoot men and women are walking the sides of the river, half naked and hungry. Here is the sound of coins in the pocket, taken into your hand. They speak with an echo of Hammurabi and of Caesar and of the old man recently found dead in the street. Here, strangely, there are no flowers, except for the odor of those roses and a single very white gardenia perched in a woman's hair. Here is the sound of water wherever it appears. In its lapping, you hear the sound of languages unwritten and forgotten. But here too is the voice of a language not yet spoken by a race of men and women not yet born.